So section 7 of the assessment is user access controls. Neil, what are the requirements for this section?
Okay, so in the user access control, we're talking about the use of user accounts, administrator accounts, how they're created, etc., and how they're configured. Okay, so everybody should be using a unique account. That's administrators and users. There needs to be a process for deleting, disabling, and creating those accounts and approving those accounts. And often that needs to be somebody quite senior who's approving the accounts. The account privileges, for access to data, and also the administrator privileges need to be looked at and, given approval depending on it. So we have a question in there that talks about the access privileges to the files, folders, and the services they need. But we have extra questions which talk about admin privileges, because Cyber Essentials promotes certain principles. So the principle of using 2 separate accounts between those for your day-to-day tasks, which is you do in your role, which could be writing Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, reading your email, that should be done in a day-to-day account with no admin privileges. You then have an account which is totally separate to install software, make configuration changes, or need admin privileges to run processes, etc. That even matters to those people such as developers and IT staff. They still need to have a separate admin account, because we don't want admin accounts to be looking at emails and surfing the internet generally, because that is where the threats come. And if you click on a link and you've got admin privileges, it could run encryption software that runs a ransomware. So we want to make sure there's a decision process or an extra logon box is required when using it. Okay, so those are the kind of things we are looking at. We need to make sure that passwords, etc., are created correctly. So there's a whole list of how this is done, but we are basically wanting passwords to be created in a safe manner. We're not looking for the common passwords anymore. We're really looking for passphrases and the use of 3 random words. That's long been the NCSE's advice, and it's important to remember Cyber Essentials is the scheme owned by the NCSE, so we should be applying all their guidance within the scheme. And they've been talking about using 3 random words to create passwords for several years now, but they also let's go on to passphrases as well. Also, how those particular passwords and whatever are protected. I've talked about in another video we've done today about the use of a password deny list, or using multi-factor authentication alongside that password to give you 3 layers of protection when you're trying to log in. So the final part really of this is also talking about use of multi-factor authentication. I think the requirement actually says you should always use multi-factor authentication. It actually says you must use multi-factor authentication on cloud services. It's there. But I think we're fast moving to a world now where you need to get away from believing logging into systems now will just be a username and password. There will be an additional layer of multi-factor authentication. It could come from an authentication app. Yep. That's an app installed on your phone. Could come through a text message. It could be sent to an email to give you an extra code. But more likely now we're starting to move to use of biometrics as that additional thing. So an iris scan, yes, they do exist in the real world already. You can just have a face scan. You can have fingerprint scans, etc., which run off your phones, etc. We're moving to this passkey related, non-using password kind of ways of logging on, etc. So we talk about multi-factor authentication at the moment, but this is a fast developing part of Cyber Essentials. So, that's the position we're at now, but look at this is going to change over time.
Yeah, and there will be more layers of security added.
There's always going to be more layers, because we always want to make sure that people's password is quite weak and they can be phished quite easily. And we just need to make sure that, those extra layers and the protections in place on cloud services and any service. So even logging into Windows 10 now, Windows 11, you can use a thing called Windows Hello that when you log in will look for a face scan or something like that, look at you, and you know, that's better than having a password, because a password is something that's been guessed by a hacker or cyber criminal or taken from a list of passwords that's been stolen through a breach or you know, a cyber attack, you know, because they're sold on the dark web. So we want them to use something that they're starting to talk about a lot more, and you'll hear this phrase a lot more, and I'm bringing it up today, is phishing resistant multi-factor authentication. Those things that a hacker can't try and talk your way into giving, you know. I think there's some very popular videos on the internet where I think, you know, people go and ask some questions and they've managed to work out their password from it. Some people still just randomly give out their passwords. We don't want that. You can't steal a fingerprint, you can't steal somebody's facial image
iris
that can be used, or the iris scan or something like a biometric. You know, it just makes it a whole lot more secure. So wherever those can be applied, we're looking for that in Cyber Essentials, and that will be, you know, this is just a changing area that a lot of the big major vendors are doing at the moment. So Cyber Essentials is starting to endorse that. We're talking about passwordless based systems in the latest revision of the scheme.
So much more to come.
Yeah.
That. So Ahmed, what are some of the common pitfalls you see with user access control?
So we come across quite a few of those ones. Like, we need someone with the leadership role in the company to approve account creation and privileges?
Yeah, there needs to be
still required that someone?
There's a process in place that needs to be. You need to give account approval, because obviously you want to understand which of your staff, you know, have access to, let's say, the HR data or something like that. You don't want all staff to see somebody's sickness records or whatever. So it needs somebody at management level to start looking and giving that approval and recording. So when somebody also leaves a position that maybe in the HR department moves to the finance department, they should have their admin, you know, their access privileges to the HR systems removed, added to the finance. That needs monitoring over the period of time. And it's the same with administrator accounts. If you don't want everybody to have access to an administrator account, it doesn't need it to carry out their role. You know, you don't want those details to fall into the wrong hands. So you want to keep monitoring administrator accounts as well.
Yeah.
And that's covered as well, like if a third-party IT company is creating those accounts.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about IT companies and, you know, MSPs, managed service providers. The accounts that are on your network, the organisation's network that's getting certified for Cyber Essentials, they are owned by the organisation, not the IT services company or the managed service provider. You need to know, as an organisation who's been asked to get Cyber Essentials, or you've decided to get Cyber Essentials, you need to know who has access to those admin privileges. Okay? We don't want IT companies and managed service providers to use one shared admin account. Each possible administrator of that network should have a unique account in their name that gives them admin privileges. Because if there's an incident or whatever, it can be tracked and looked at. But actually, by having a shared account across, say, 40 IT administrators, it's quite a wide attack surface, you know, and actually having it down to individual users having admin privileges, in the eyes of what we're talking with the NCSE, and through the Cyber Essentials team that I work with, having that narrows the field, actually, because you've got to attack and get one. It's easier to try, if you have a shared account across 40 admin users in an IT company, sometimes it is possible that they have, the way those passwords are stored could be as much as a threat to the IT company. So you, as a certified organisation, okay, you're in control of those passwords. You need to know which individual users are accessing it. Sometimes it's the practices of the IT services or the MSP could be causing you trouble in the future. Now, this could be quite simply through perhaps a service they used. And we've seen this with various attacks against MSP related services to manage their clients. We have seen some high profile attacks in the past where gaining access to that has not only given you access to your organization, but also other organizations that they are managing on the same platform. So you, for your own due diligence in the organization who's getting Cyber Essentials, really should be monitoring and checking in which individual users have admin privileges on the network. And that is to protect your organization.
Yes. So one user, one account.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to make this clear, because a lot of businesses we come through is they get this wrong. So if I have a third-party IT company taking care of this, and the IT company have an admin account, they share the password. What's this, like, is that allowed?
No, it's not allowed in Cyber Essentials.
It's not allowed.
We want people, because you remember that
For the
account,
third-party
that account is on the organization's network, okay? And if it's a generic account that's used by many people, who do you know who's carrying out the work? How's the password being protected? If that password's being protected against being shared across 40 users. If they have a unique account, it's one password per user that's unique.
Yes.
Okay? So they couldn't, so if they get...
Easier to track, easier to control.
So you've got to also get the username correct as well. If it's just admin, one password shared between... Well... you can think about it. It causes problems. That's why when we say you have separate accounts, it needs to apply to any user and unique accounts, any user that is on that network that comes under the certification of Cyber Essentials.
Yeah. Do we have any other pitfalls? Or?
Yeah, so you mentioned something about like account separation in your talk. We come across also something we call PIM and PAM.
Yeah.
Can you talk about PIM and PAM?
Okay, please? I'm not going to go into particular vendors.
No, is it accepted? Is it? What's
PIM and PAM is a solution, okay? Privileged identity management or privileged access management. They are a kind of solution to manage accounts and how admin privileges are given to users at times. So we don't like privilege elevation in Cyber Essentials because that is giving a standard user account admin privileges for a set period of time, okay, to run an administrative activity. It could be to install a piece of software, it could be to make configuration changes, etc. But actually, what is a safe period of time to have admin privileges on a standard user account? Well, really, nobody can come to a conclusion, and really isn't. So this is where we apply the principle of least privilege on accounts. So we want the day-to-day work to be carried out with a standard user account, okay? And we want a separate administrator account when software, etc. wants to be done. Gives a decision point. With PIMs and PAMs, you need to configure those PIMs and PAMs to apply to separate accounts to carry out an administrative duty, okay? Not to elevate the privileges of a standard user account for a period of time. Take the example of a ransomware, okay? If you were to click on a link that maybe have a ransomware attached where it's got a link that wants to run some encryption software, you click on that thing and it comes up, oh, you need an extra username and password, okay? All right, great, but it's got to be a different account, all right? It's a decision process to do that. If the user hasn't got a separate admin account, they can't run that and install that encryption software. If they've had their privileges elevated and they go back through PIMs and PAMs to have their privileges elevated for a period of time, it could be conceivable, okay, that they click on that link and the encryption software automatically runs because they have those permissions or privileges on that account for a period of time.
Okay.
All right. If they don't have that and it's just done by least privilege and they have to put in a completely different set of username and password to run and install that software, it gives them a decision process to go, oh, there's something wrong here. Why am I being asked to install this software? Okay, so there's lots of reasons why we do that. But PIMs and PAMs can be used, but don't do it for time elevation. All right?
Yes.
We don't want to see time elevation being used. But you can use a PIM and PAM to manage this, but you really need to be applying the principle of least privilege and using 2 accounts through the PIM and PAM solution to install software and carry out administrative tasks.
So another question here just to cover. You say something about MFA, and the user must apply MFA if they offer by the service.
Yeah.
What if the service offer MFA, but you have to pay for it?
We would say you need to take up and use that offer, because there's no doubt that multi-factor authentication is the best way to protect access to your cloud services. Okay, you know, paying for it, I know as an added option, it's hard, but if you want to protect your organisation and you really rely on that cloud service, you're going to have to pay for it. The alternative is go and find one that doesn't ask you to pay for multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
It's already included as part of the service. But if you really cannot move from it, you will have to pay for that to be compliant for Cyber Essentials.
So either way, they must have it in a place.
Yes. We cannot get away from the fact that how much more secure you become from applying multi-factor authentication.
And that cover both the self-assessment and the plus?
Yes, yes. Yeah, you must have it. So if you declare that you're using cloud services and they have multi-factor authentication in self-assessment, it will be tested in the CE+. They will test for that multi-factor authentication to be in place.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
That's great.
That's great. Thank you very much, Neil. Thanks, Ahmed. If your organisation is interested in obtaining Cyber Essentials, check out our website, cyberessentials.online.